In this video, we are going to look for exponents. So just pertains to exponents. We're first going to look at the product rule. Product rule. So when you're multiplying like bases, keep the base and add the exponents. So we're going to add the exponents. All right, so like bases. So I have two a's. I have an a squared and a regular a. Well, when a letter or number do not have an exponent behind it, there's actually an invisible one. So what I like to do is I go ahead and put my invisible ones. Now I'm going to combine like bases, so my a's, and I'm adding exponents. So 2 plus 1, a3. Now do the same thing for the b. I have a 1 plus 4, so b5, and that's your answer. Now, when you have regular numbers, you multiply them like regular. So the parentheses, two parentheses next to each other just means multiplications. So let's multiply the numbers. 3 times -2 is -6. Now let's look at our x's. We are adding like bases, so they are like, they're both x's, so we can add them together. 4 plus 3, x7. So that's the product rule. D in product, D's in add is how I like to remember it as. So the next rule we're going to look at is called the power rule. So the power rule is, instead of we have two parentheses next to each other, this one we have an extra exponent on the outside, and it's usually in the back. So power rule, when raising a power to a power, you keep the base and multiply this time the exponents. So power to a power. All right, so we need to multiply the exponents. So we're going to distribute that outside 3 into every exponent inside the parentheses. So 3 times 6, 18. 3 times 2, 6. All right, let's look at number 4. So now we have a number and a variable. Before you do anything, put your invisible 1, because behind every number and every variable, there's always at least an invisible 1. So do that first. It will eliminate simple mistakes. Now distribute that outside 3 exponent into every exponent inside the parentheses. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And then 3 cubed is 27, A6. So that is the power rule. Power to a power, we multiply and distribute that into every exponent inside the parentheses. All right, so now we're going to look at the quotient rule. So my quotient rule is dividing like bases. You keep the base, and this time we're going to subtract the exponents. Doesn't the fraction division bar just look like a big subtraction sign? So that's how you can remember that one. All right, so we're going to divide the numbers like regular. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Put your invisible ones. Now my R, do I have another R at the bottom? I do not. So just carry it over to the answer. So if you don't have anything to subtract, it just carries over to the answer. But I do have like bases, the S at the top and the bottom. So I am going to subtract them. 5 minus 1 is 4. So S4. So 5RS4. So the quotient rule, divide the front numbers like regular and then subtract like variables. It's a big subtraction bar. All right, the last rule we're going to cover in this video is the negatives. So when you have a negative exponent, all that means is it's actually a fraction. So I need to rewrite 4 negative squared. So to get rid of the negative, I'm going to move 4 squared to the denominator. And it gets rid of the negative. Now I need to solve 4 squared. 4 times 4, 16. So negative exponent just means that it lives at the bottom in the denominator. All right, so let's look at the next one. So here we have like bases, the subtraction, the quotient rule. So we need to subtract first, and then you last see if it comes out to be negative. So the negative rule is all the way at the end. So if you have a negative exponent, then you have to handle it all the way at the end, your last step. All right, so you have to subtract first. So 1 minus negative 4. What happens when you have a subtraction and a minus and a negative next to each other? It becomes a plus. So 1 plus 4 is positive 5. So is positive 5 a negative? No, it is not. So we don't need to move it to the bottom. And that's your final answer. So any negative exponents, you have to handle it and you move it to the bottom. Negatives live at the bottom in the denominator. So these are all rules that only pertain to exponents. They're exponent rules.